Welcome to another enlightening episode of Mastering Counseling, the podcast that delves deep into the world of therapy and in the business of helping others. I'm your host, Becky. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting the esteemed Jianny Adamo, a renowned therapist, coach, and the driving force behind the practice Fearless Love. Welcome to our show today. We're so glad to have your expertise on here.
Thank you, Becky. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
She has so much to share with us. So we are going to kind of go back in time a little bit and ask you about your pivotal life experiences that caused you to create Fearless Love and basically carve the path into working on relationships and intimacy.
So, Becky, I opened up my doors of Fearless Love 1 year after my divorce. I had been in a long-term marriage, and I had fought to keep that marriage going. And we had sought out therapists. We probably sought counseling for at least good 10 years out of our 15-year marriage. We considered each other best friends. So this was not an easy decision to finally pull the trigger and go through a divorce. So when upon my divorce, I moved down to South Florida. So when we realized like we needed to move apart, we needed to start over. I needed to start over, and I needed a fresh start. I figured I would come to Florida. And while I was walking on the beach one day, early on in those days when I first moved down, with a new friend, she asked me, like, why did your marriage fail? Like, why did you go through that divorce? And, and I ultimately said to her, because my husband's love wasn't fearless. He lived under a cloud of so much fear, anxiety, and craziness. And he wouldn't even admit it, because he wouldn't even admit that he had anxiety. So he also had high narcissistic traits. So therefore, he wasn't even able to accept that he dealt with a tremendous amount of fears and anxiety and a whole bunch of other things. So first of all, that's how my name, Fearless Love, came about. So it came about early on after my divorce. And the reason why I do what I do is that through the 10 years, the 15 years that we were married, I had a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. I dealt with a lot of anxiety and depression that was coming from feeling entrapped in a marriage where we loved each other, but we could not understand one another. We were very disconnected at the intimate levels, at some of those deeper levels. We were not, and some of our values did not match as well. So those things were really tearing us apart. So I ultimately found my calling going through that pain, going through that suffering, going through that, prior to going through that divorce. I figured out this was my calling in life. I wanted to help as many couples as possible, as well as helping us. Obviously, in the earlier years, I wanted to help us, and I wanted to help as many couples as possible to get through their pain, to get through their suffering, to get to the other side and create a happy and harmonious home. So that's ultimately what brought me into this field.
Thank you so much. When I was looking at your work, I saw the video, and I believe it's you on the beach. And so I love how you connect that to your story, and how you're very open about your personal life and where it's brought you today, even though many hard things, a lot of good has come from it. So in talking about your practice and helping other couples, how have you helped them with specific kind of more modern life challenges, especially in cases of narcissistic abuse or betrayal? What are some of the strategies, and how do you approach these extremely difficult issues that couples face?
Okay, so Becky, I'm going to continue on my journey, because all of these places where I've been in my life have actually unfolded and brought me to the path that I'm on. So first, I'm a marriage counselor and a couples counselor because I had to go through a very difficult marriage and ultimately ended in divorce. from there, then obviously I had to become a divorce therapist, a therapist who could support the people who are divorcing. Half of our population or marriages end up in divorce. So you would think that once you move on from a, bad relationship, you let go of the baggage, you started addressing the codependency, because I was definitely a codependent partner, that things would clear up and now everything's going to be fine. My goal was, I'm going to find my next husband within a year because I'm having my children and I've already wasted 15 years. I got married young, obviously. So I was on that agenda. I'm like, I need to find my next husband and, and start having our family very quickly. So a year later, I got into a relationship with another man here in South Florida. I didn't like him. He ultimately triggered my chemistry. He knew how to chase and he knew how to, win my love. And so I was like, oh, on the fence, because I was like not interested initially. Ultimately, long story short, the man was a sweet and charming sociopath who knows how to charm us, who knows how to trigger our chemistry, to manipulate the chemistry and all that wonderful stuff. They've been doing this since they were little and they haven't stopped. So anyways, to make a long story short, then so that relationship ended about almost a year and a half into it after many breakups. And it left me in a place very traumatized, in a place that I had never experienced before in my life. I'm normally a very confident woman. I've always been. I'm from New Jersey, so I'm very go-getter, intellectual, like I know my shit and I go after it. I'm, so I have really a lot of strength, sense of self. And all of a sudden I go through this relationship and now I'm asking questions. I don't know who I am. I am double guessing myself. I'm in self-doubt all the time, a bedrock of anxiety and stress, can't sleep. The list goes on. All the PTSD symptoms go on and on and on and on. So obviously, eventually I realized, I was in a very toxic relationship with a narcissistic, sociopathic individual. So when I started that journey of healing, I started to write my book, From Love Trauma to Fearless Love, 7 Tango Steps for Breaking Free from Narcissists and Predators. It took about 4 years to write the book because it took about 4 years to go through my healing. Through that healing, I was able to understand why I married the man I did, why I am now, had been entrapped in a very toxic, narcissistic, mentally and emotionally abusive relationship as a therapist. Okay, so yes, there was a lot of shame around that. Then, hello, I'm a therapist, and how the heck did I get stuck here? But once you get through and understand who you're dealing with, you're like, oh, anybody can get entrapped here unless you understand the signs. So once you become a master of understanding the red flags, then you won't get stuck there. But otherwise, anybody can get entrapped with them. So like the shame eventually evaporates because you're like, this happens to everybody who gets targeted and has no idea that they just have been targeted. So going through that deep healing allowed me to go through healing of transgenerational traumas in my life through family of origin, and allowed me to heal the childhood wounds that came in from my family and traumas that I experienced in high school, because I am ultimately a survivor of sexual trauma. And so bottom line, I was raped in high school by one of my peers. And back then, when most of us didn't say anything, so that trauma never got healed. And that ultimately led me to marry someone who I could trust and feel safe with, but ultimately would not be sexually compatible with me or compatible with me in many other aspects of life. So that marriage, even though it was safe, did not represent my long-term partnership. It was a safe space for me not to get sexually abused again. So with all of that, obviously, I have great depth and understanding now of what happens when love is turned on its head. And now it's used to exploit, to abuse, to manipulate and control another human being. And when you're entrapped in that darkness, when love is turned on its head, it is really dark. You don't know which way is out, how the heck to come back to earth, because you feel like you're entrapped in some abyss, in some dark space that there's no door or window. It's just darkness and confusion. and anxiety. So with all of that, going through that deep soul healing, I'm now equipped. I'm so equipped now to handle just about anything that comes my way through my therapy practice. Attachment traumas, check. Childhood traumas, check. Sexual abuse traumas, check. Marital discord and communication, check. I'm pretty like in the area of love, marriage, and relationships, and narcissistic abuse, and the healing that needs to happen for us to come back to be in a healthy space for relationships, and ultimately for our mental health and our sense of personal freedom. I've got it. Like I'm able to like work with my clients in all these aspects because I had to go through that whole paradigm. I had to go through this whole existence, of going into that dark place in this world that most of us do not want to go into. But unfortunately, I had to visit that place.
Wow, that is so powerful. You taking the darkest points and the phrase that you're using about turning love on upside down. Yeah, that's a powerful metaphor. And I'm sorry you went through all that, but you have really used that and it's made you so strong. And, people, if they're dealing with such deep hurts, they need to have a person like you that can be confident and not, I'm sure you're not shocked by anything that comes your way. So thank you for sharing your personal side of everything and using your healing to help others. Can you go a little more? Go ahead.
Yeah, because I think you had asked about like how do I work with them. So when it comes to narcissistic abuse, basically it's a lot of grief work because there's a lot of losses, the loss of safety, the loss of trust, the loss of love, the loss of security, the loss of just being, because you're not allowed to be anymore. And when you're being, it's just a lot of anxiety. It's the anxiety and the stress is actually higher than you being in peace, and being in a solid place. So there's a lot of grief work that I work with any victims of narcissistic abuse, or anyone who's been betrayed in their relationship. Obviously, then there's the psychoeducational piece that comes in and learning all the red flags, understanding the manipulations, the emotional blackmail that happens when, again, love is used against you, because that's ultimately what's happening when we are in a narcissistic abusive relationship. All of our strengths, all our capacity for empathy and compassion and love is being used against us, every ounce of it.
Yeah. And when you mention when you're, don't feel safe and you feel betrayed, it's replaced by fear. I think you would agree, right? Which is such a powerful mechanism, usually for the worst. So, thank you for clarifying some of those specific angles that people come to you with. Can you talk a little bit more just on like mind, body, and spirit and the interconnectedness of that in your therapy and coaching at Fearless Love?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to continue to connect the thread with my story. So what allowed me to survive such a heinous, dark time in my life was what I call these are my wellness hacks. So the first one is physical fitness. I have been working out for over 25 years, like every day. Doesn't mean like I'm like lifting weights or, sweating bullets every day. I'm not, but I walk or I'll bike, I'll go swimming, I'll head to the gym, I'll do a yoga class, I'll do Pilates, I'll do 20 minutes of weights in my home through like a YouTube class. So it doesn't matter what I do, but I am very mindful that every day I engage my body in something that is going to help it stay fit and stay healthy. So I teach my clients and I help them to create their own, agenda, their own program, their own format, whether it's 3 times a week, but 3 times a week, you're going to head to the gym and spend an hour, whatever it is. So the first thing that I'm very, like I do it religiously is like my physical fitness, and I bring that to my practice with my clients. Then we have the mindful fit, the mental fitness. So when I was going through my healing, what I ended up doing was I plus, besides going to a therapist, I psychoeducated myself on all of these aspects that were my blind spots. So for me, that was the narcissist, the sociopath, the mental and emotional abuse. So like I read up on all of these things so I could fully understand what had happened to me. What did I miss? Because again, we're in self-blame or blaming ourselves for all that has happened, instead of seeing the truth that we were being manipulated the entire time. So I also support my clients in helping them understand where their blind spots are and the areas that they should go psychoeducate themselves through reading, through YouTube videos, whichever means is easiest for them. And then the third wellness hack is my spirituality. When I was 11, I felt like God actually spoke to my heart and said, I have a calling. So I was like, cool. And I told my parents and they thought that was cool too. Then around age 30 is when I actually heard again in my heart what my calling was. And what I'm doing on this planet is part of my calling, to be able to help individuals and couples create safe, intimate marriages and fearless, loving relationships that will stand the test of time, that you can create a new legacy for your families to flourish. You do not need to keep repeating the same miseries that have come and been passed down through the generations prior to you. Because a heck of a lot of the stuff, when I went through my healing, I realized, oh my God, half of the stuff wasn't even my fault. It was coming in through the generational traumas that were never addressed and that never healed. So once you start lifting all of this and understanding all of this, all that shame and self-blame evaporates because you're like, oh, this had nothing to do with me. It was just what I inherited that I just had to look at and release. So anyways, through my spirituality, that allowed me to keep the hope and the positivity alive and keep the faith. So that helped me to keep moving forward in the midst of my pain. Oh, one more thing with the physical fitness. I also started doing Argentine tango dance lessons during the time that I was going through that traumatic experience and writing my book. So ultimately, I used the hobby that I had engaged in, dancing Argentine tango, and blended it or married it to my psychology and my therapy and created this book, From Love Trauma to Fearless Love, 7 Tango Steps for Breaking Free from Narcissists and Predators. So I was able to actually use it as a strength to help educate and empower the victims of narcissistic abuse, the victims of predators, to understand what the lessons on love are. And I use it as a reflection so that the protagonist in the book was able to reflect and say, okay, after each lesson, these are some of the things that I did not see in my relationship. So these are some of the red flags. The book has received several awards and it became an Amazon bestseller when it was released. So, and then coming back to the spirituality. So yes, so physical fitness, mental fitness, and spiritual fitness are very important to me. So with my clients, as you know, meditation is proven to be really very important for us. Prayer, being part of a spiritual community group. So I encourage my clients, whatever faith they're in or wherever they're at in their faith walk, it doesn't matter. I encourage them to nurture that, to meditate, to pray, to find prayer partners, to find a community that shares the same faith as them. So this will give a foundation for strength and resiliency for them.
3 things that stood out to me. Prayer is huge for me, so I love that. And then breaking those generational curses, as people call them, are huge. And then I did read through your steps with the tango. I love how you brought together dance, which the tango to me always seems like such a fun thing, and then incorporating it with your work and couples. So very unique and so creative. And I look forward to reading more about that. So lots of good things here. going in the angle with our kind of fast-paced society and so much is happening in many families, how do you help couples with communication and conflict resolution?
Okay, so that's my baby. That's like where I've started. So I'm like, I could do that one with my eyes closed. I could probably do a whole bunch of these with my eyes closed, but that's okay because I've been in practice now for 16 years. So it's been a while. So back then, when I was still in therapy with my ex-husband, one of our therapists was an imago therapist. I loved our sessions with her because she was teaching us healthy communication skills. So to this day, like 20 years later, I'm still using imagotherapy for communication skills. And guess what, Becky? In this modern day, with this fast-paced world, it actually still works really nice. And I do a lot of telehealth sessions, so it means one person needs to be speaking at one time because otherwise we can't hear each other. And being able to put them in this structured format to actually help them to understand their partner, to actually become better listeners, to become more empathic as they're hearing what their partner is saying is priceless. And that's the beauty of when we are learning techniques and theories that can be timeless because they're universal truths about who we are as human beings. So they don't go out of style. We are still using those techniques. They're still working really well. And like including my clients who have ADHD and all these other people who can't focus, they love it. Why? Because the brain loves structure. And the minute that we put someone with like the ADHD or some other disorders that they can't connect very well with their partners, and I give them the structure, maybe at first they have a little bit of difficulties following through, but the minute they understand it, they love it. Love, love, love. Because now they're heard. Now they're understood. Now they have a pathway to hear their partner and understand their partner. So yeah, so I'm using a lot of that imago therapy techniques for communication. And I have other trainings with Gottman and emotionally focused therapy and relational living therapy. So I have a whole bunch of other techniques that I use, CBT and a whole bunch of other stuff. But that to me is a home run, the communication skills that we teach through imago therapy.
I love the timeless imago therapy paired with the telehealth and that it does slow people down, right? Because both of us can't talk on this podcast at the same time and be heard. So that really rings true. I love that. Um, let's talk a little bit about people who aren't married, but maybe dating or even in premarital counseling. What are some of the tools you give them to establish a strong foundation for a future, maybe more firm relationship?
Okay, so obviously prevention is extremely important, being proactive. So for couples who are dating, people who are recently divorced, highly recommend going into therapy before you get onto the dating scene. And you need to go through a bit of a healing journey, finish your grief first of why the relationship failed, and also all the hopes and dreams that you had attached to that needs to be, healed, like where you need to reclaim your hopes and dreams so that you can bring them somewhere else. Anyways, so with the dating, you get with me, what I work with my clients, if they're working with me on the dating, they're going to understand their needs, their wants, their non-negotiables, what their values truly are, and so that they can authentically connect with someone who's already mirroring these important aspects of who this individual is. What happens, I think, generally in dating, people are looking for connections and chemistry. Connection and chemistry is great, but it's going to also tie you up with people who can be toxic, especially if we haven't healed traumatic experiences from our childhoods, like me. There's a lot of people like that. We haven't healed things. So the unhealed traumas, the unmet needs are going to be driving your chemistry. So if you're only looking for chemistry, well, you're going to be preparing, hopefully, to also do the work inside of that relationship, but sometimes that relationship is very toxic and you're going to not be able to withstand that situation. So anyway, so first we get you prepared in understanding who you are, what you want, and what you need, right? Also, for a lot of the women, self-esteem is a problem these days. So we have to elevate your self-esteem, bring up your sense of worth. You know, you need to know that you are worthy of love and to be loved, and that you are the queen. In a relationship, you are the queen and you should be treated as such. And then if the couple is already dating and they're coming in for premarital, then I support them in teaching them communication skills that are effective, helping them to manage conflict effectively, increasing intimacy. So they're going to be doing a lot of exercises with me to help them bridge and increase the bonding, the intimacy, the communication, fostering safetyness in the relationship, and also talking about areas that might be issues for them in the in the days to come, in the future, whatever, whether they need to talk about children, finances, the in-laws. All of that gets flushed out in therapy so that they know how to effectively address all those things.
Love that. I help do some premarital counseling myself, and all those things are so important. People think they're going to live on love, and you're like, we need to talk about some things ahead of time for sure. And everyone wants to be a queen. A good friend of mine, her husband calls her queen, so that I hear that a lot. Shifting just into a different topic, because you have so many skills, we want to touch on several of them, but how would you say Fearless Love supports clients specifically dealing with infidelity, possibly anxiety and depression from that, and how to move them from that state into a more hopeful and positive focus?
Okay, so when we're dealing with betrayal, we're dealing now with a sense of trust that has been severed. It's been broken. In order for trust or healthy relationship to exist, trust needs to be present. Your word needs to be honored. Your agreements need to be honored. And when our words and our actions do not match, now we're operating out of integrity. We're no longer dealing with someone who is reliable or dependable, and it creates a severance right there of trust. So the first thing that needs to happen is, obviously I'll get to hear the story of what happened. This is a one-time event. Is this chronic? So I'll also need to figure out if it's chronic, are we dealing with a sex addiction? Like what's going on here? Because those things are handled very differently. When people have an addiction, they need to go to a sex addiction specialist. So I will refer the sex addict out. So I will not work with the sex addict alone because I'm not certified in sex addiction. Let's say it's not a sex addiction issue. It's a one-time occurrence, whatever the situation is, and the person does want to stay with their betrayed partner, and their betrayed partner wants to stay with with their partner. So then I would take them on. And again, I started out with an assessment. So I'm going to look at all aspects of the relationship for both of them. Many times when there's like just the one time this thing happened, usually there's an emotional intimacy disconnection, so that they are not emotionally bonding at the level that they should be and communicating at the levels that they should be. So that will get addressed. And then, of course, the person who has perpetrated the infidelity will now be responsible for creating the bridge back to trust. It is them who have to now be patient with their partner while their partner is still in, a lot of them get into PTSD because it was a complete shocker. They have totally trusted their partner and trusted themselves to their mate or their partner. And when this happens, it is a rude awakening. It's like the rug gets pulled out from underneath you and the world is no longer a safe place for you. So all of that has to be eventually brought back, that the partner who's, done the stepping outside of the relationship is the one who's responsible for being transparent and meeting the requirements of the partner who was betrayed.
Thank you. That is so important. I know that these things are on the rise and often aren't talked about. And I've talked to many different counselors and therapists, and we haven't gone into this realm. So it's really good to hear, even though it can be difficult to talk about. Is there anything else? We probably could talk for 3 hours with all of your skill sets, but is there anything else that you really want to share with our listeners today, or any advice if someone is thinking about this role or this career?
I'll start with the advice. I think most of us who pursue a mental health or counseling, social work, marriage and family, any of the psychology degrees, it's because we ourselves have experienced traumatic things in our childhood, that we probably are still trying to solve and trying to understand. And then we have usually a ton of compassion and empathy. Thus, we want to go like me, go help everybody else who's got issues and problems and whatever. So, we put two good things out together, and I think it's a win-win. So I would say follow your dreams. Don't let, external circumstances, finances, whatever, like not, you like just follow your dreams. Like don't let anything stop you. Sometimes it does get difficult, like when you're in private practice, you need to figure out like where are your clients coming from, and you have to become this master at marketing, and you're like, well, I hate marketing. I know, I do too, but then you have to become like an excellent person in marketing. You know what I mean? So whatever the challenges are, figure it out, follow your dreams, pursue it. And also you're going to bring your clients to the level that you heal. So I would suggest, looking at all aspects of who you are and looking for all different aspects of healing. So like, I've tried like biofeedback. Like I said, I'm spiritual. I try it like all sorts of things. Like I'm not just like one way or the highway. No, I'm very open to trying exploring different avenues to bring the healing that I need for myself. And then I have a lot of support system in place. So this is very important that if you're going to be healing and supporting others to heal, then you're going to have a very strong support system for yourself. And that, thank God, I do have. I have a really strong community that loves me and supports me, and I love them back. So I feel very, strong there. And then just the final words for me is, recently I put together a document called 7 Relationship Fears, Keeping Successful People from Being Happy. And that is actually a free gift that you can download on my website. It will be actually there this week. So by the time this airs, it will already be live. And it gives you 7 relationship fears that most of us are carrying with us because of what has happened to us in childhood and generational traumas that have come through. And then I give you, what are these fears? How are they affecting you in a relationship? And ultimately what to do with that. So I would invite your audience to go on my website, which is fearlesslove.net, and download 7 Relationship Fears, Keeping Successful People from Being Happy. Because at the end of the day, we are created and designed to love and be loved. And our freedom is found in loving. That's where our freedom is found. Anything other entraps us, and we become like the object of an addict chasing something that is empty. It is only love that fills us in our whole being. And that's what we're wired for. It's what we're created for, to love and be loved. And that's what we find personal freedom.
Jianny, thank you so much. I did check out your website, and whether you're going into this career or not, I would suggest check it out, because we have everyone has these needs, right? And so they're super important. Thank you for helping us with seeing the ins and outs of these deep hurts, people in their probably worst points. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And to our listeners, please comment, check us out on Spotify, on YouTube, and we look forward to continuing this discussion on mastering counseling. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.